So the next thing that we're going to be talking about is a piece of CG render that was leaked out from the Tokyo Toy Show booklet from Takara.
Disney label black Mickey, right? That's
Yeah.
what we're talking about?
Actually, there was a Disney label Black Mickey repaint.
Oh, wait. Oh, you're talking about the Dinobot on top. Okay,
Yeah.
never mind. Sorry.
No, the
My
ironic
bad.
they repainted the hell out of that Disney label
I
stuff.
know.
Anyways, so I believe his name was Type R from the boards. He took a photograph of the booklet that Takara Tomy was passing out at Tokyo Toy Show, showing off what they have planned in the near future for all their lines. And one thing that stuck out that was a new update on stuff, hot off the heels off of the mention of Sunstreaker, is they're now going back to talking about the original masterpiece that we knew about, the masterpiece Beast Wars Dinobot. And what we were shown here is a more or less a CG mock-up that's done in gray scaling to kind of show us how this is all going to go down. And yeah, it looks pretty damn impressive.
It looks scarily show accurate.
Well, if the Cheetor was any indication, if the Optimus Primal / Beast Convoy is any indication,
Like,
if I always like to mention the Rhinox, because I always feel that if that thing was not in a Generations Voyager box and you put it in a masterpiece box, I'd believe it. You know,
maybe
just as there.
maybe with some heavier plastics. Or
Yeah,
maybe
they would have used a more
something.
solid plastic. They probably would have put an eye glow gimmick, or something,
Yeah.
just to justify the price point. But
I
I
wouldn't be
mean,
surprised if they actually did that though.
I've been
If they
so
would.
impressed thus far with the modern engineering, but Dinobot has always been one of those toys that him and to a mild extent, I felt Black Arachnia were just one of those where we could probably do a good attempt at the show model, but at the same time, there's going to have to be compromises. But thus far, it looks like they've somehow managed to do it. Because we've had in the past, we had the original Dinobot toy, which, it was what it was back in 1995, 96. Then they did at the time it was the Classics one or the Universe 2.0 one. And that one a lot of people shat all over. Rightfully so, because they kind of had an idea, but they didn't go through completely with what they wanted to. So, they kind of gave him hands instead of his claw hands, and people had to kind of improvise to do the claw hands. And he didn't really have a sword. He had a missile that, kind of could be a sword, but it really isn't a sword. It's a missile, and there's a lot of things that just didn't work out with that toy. And then when they did the Henkei repaint, at least it was more show accurate in terms of the coloring, but still it wasn't there. It wasn't completely done. This masterpiece mock-up, I'm looking at it going like, all right, so we got the false chest, like I've said before, same thing with the Sunstreaker, to pull off, that perfect look. It's not just the dino chest, because up to this point they used the actual dino heads for both the original toy and the Classics one to make his chest. This one, it's clearly a false chest. I'm really curious where they're going to put his legs, because that was always something that's like, where do you put his robot legs for his
well, from what I'm looking at in his toy design here, it looks like his dinosaur legs are going to be his arms, basically. That's what I'm kind of seeing, or at least it looks like it. Like if you look at the you have the covering part of the leg.
Yeah, I see it.
And
There's
down,
a bicep and there's a forearm that looks. But
it looks somewhat
that's
similar.
always been the case with the original toy, anyways.
Oh, okay.
It's it's always been but even then, like, I'm surprised because there's a shot of his back and they still managed to keep the detailing of the spinal cord.
Yeah,
that was part of the animation model. It's like, part of me, number one, the first thing that confuses me is he has the legit straight up complete dino tail. How the hell is his rotor blade thing folding the way that it does to be able to pull that off? Because even the Classics one, there had to be a little hanging kibble that went on the inside of the rotor blade. I mean, there's a lot of stuff here that obviously it's a CG grayscale, so we're missing the whole story. But at the same time, it looks pretty damn awesome. But another thing to also notice, and I was just staring at actually the rear shot of the CG model. It looks like, and I hope this is just, you know, a work in progress thing, but it looks like the tips of the dino tails fold over the back of the rotor, which is, I don't know, that's going to look kind of ugly then. But I hope that that's just, I don't know, I hope that's just, maybe it'll fold into it or something, I don't know, or cover it. But I mean, the head looks like it's dead on, and considering there's going to be, just like with the Cheetor and the Primal, like two things thus far that have been a common thing with both Beast Wars releases that we've gotten is, number one, extra accessories, and number two, interchangeable faces. In both modes, that was a really cool thing. Is, you know, it was one thing to get different faces for Optimus Primal in the robot modes. It was also cool to get different facial expressions of Optimus Primal in the ape mode, and same thing with Cheetor. And that was always a big emphasis with the Beast Wars show, is how much
they emoted.
Emoted in expression. And I've said that many times about Beast Wars, is that it was one of those Transformer shows that if you watched it on mute, there was still so much facial expression coming from these characters, and because, you know, they're not cars, you get to have that in both. You know, you get to have that in both alt mode and robot mode. Where, I mean, I love, you know, everything when it comes to cars with G1 or Beast War, with animated or otherwise. But when they're in alt mode, you can't tell shit. You know, like, I mean, there's no way to tell an angry hot rod from a sad and happy hot rod. You know, maybe you know, some of the scenes from Transformers Animated, Derek White tried to go for an anime kind of style. You know, Bumblebee, when he's nervous, the car shakes or something. But in general, you know, it was very static. So I'm really curious if there's going to be, maybe not so much so with Dinobot in terms of his facial expressions, because he might just have his stoic face and then maybe a yelling face with green eyes because he's shooting his laser beams or something. But I mean, in the case of the actual raptor head, I'm curious if they're going to have one where he's sticking out his tongue. Yeah. He's been known for that a lot. I always go, you know. I don't know. So I just imagine they might just have one where he's just sticking out his tongue or something. Because he was one of those Beast Wars toys that desperately needed an update. Because I mean, even though we got like the classics Rat Trap's original Beast Wars toy wasn't terrible. It wasn't perfect, but it wasn't terrible either.
It was just like the body didn't come in on itself or anything like that. It just kind of stuck out, and it was like a shell former, right?
But it's I mean, when I look at, like, you know, guys like Pterosaur, Black Arachnia, those were ones that really needed an update. You know, they were ones that, like, you look at the toy and then you look at the animation model and you go, you know, there could have been a lot more done. And Pterosaur is, like, always to me on the short list of ones that should get another revisit. And not necessarily a masterpiece toy. That's something that, due to the simplicity of its design, it could be a Classics Deluxe, and it would do the job, just like a Rhinox, you know. Like Rhinox too. Rhinox was one of those toys that desperately needed an update. Cheetor, not so much, but I mean, I'm glad they did.
And I guess Scorponok was
Scorponok again. If you didn't have that mutant head problem, he was pretty damn close. You know what I mean? He had the bee. He had his little Cyber Bee, which was a bonus. The little missiles. Everything kind of worked out. And then by the time
they used in the show too, no?
Yeah, exactly. And by the time you got around to Transmetal, then everything was more or less flawless. I mean, with the exception of, like, maybe Cheetor needed a different head sculpt because he had the weird face on that one.
Oh, the weird teeth.
Yeah, very grinny Cheetor. But otherwise, I mean, most of them were pretty flawless. They were very true to the animation models in the show. But that's chicken without the egg, because Beast Wars was a toy line before it was a show. So, and they never intended really for it to be a show. It was like, oh, maybe Dark Horse Comics is going to do a comic series. Didn't pan out. You know, and there was a lot of ideas thrown around. Then it became a CG show when Mainframe came forward with it for Hasbro. Yeah. So, but of course, it's like Fleer O'Deary, where they looked at the toys and said, we can make them look nicer, and, you know, they compromised.
And then the technology caught up with the animation models.
Oh, yeah, of course, of course.
Because, like, I'm looking at, like, Dinobot right here, and to my knowledge, he looks pretty show accurate. Like,
Oh, but I'm telling you,
like
like
in his robot mode, and then it makes me think about. Wait a minute. Oh, I didn't even pay attention to his head being bigger when he was in robot mode. Like his dinosaur head that's on his chest.
yeah.
Like I didn't even like my brain is like, oh, I didn't even realize his head was smaller in Dinobot mode, like in Raptor mode than in his like when he gets also he gets bigger and taller, and then like the head is like stretched out over his chest.
Yeah, well, and the funny thing is on the old Rhino DVDs of Beast Wars, and I believe Shout Factory probably used the same extras. They showed like animation models. Like you could go frame by frame in the animation in like these CG controlled environments to see how it worked. And most of the Beast Wars ones, to be fair, they weren't transforming on screen. The CG models were collapsing on each other and then inflating into a secondary CG model. So there really wasn't a lot of transforming going on in the show because accuracy wasn't really important. It's like they didn't really think like, okay, where's his leg going to go when we transform it? We're going to be like, well, the CG model is going to implode on itself and then replode. It's kind of like what happened with Beast Machines, where they would just glow and and then everything. Well, Beast Machines is a whole other animal. Revisiting those designs is going to be a whole other story.
If they even bother.
If they ever bother, I don't even. You know what? The thing is, Beast Machines in Japan had a very limited release, and I believe it was DVD only, and even even the toys, I believe they were Toys R Us Japan exclusives. It was called Beast Wars Returns in Japan, and it didn't get a big push. It had some unique repaints, which were actually more show accurate than what we got over here, but as a whole, it didn't get a huge reception. So
the only one that actually seemed interesting of those toys was the Rat Trap, but meh.
Well, even the Savage Noble, I thought that was unique. I thought it was again there was a lot of different stuff that came from that line. One of the worst ones being the Night Scream. What a terrible toy. Oversized, number one, so it doesn't even scale with anything. Terrible character, terrible design, and then worst of all, which is like the nail in the coffin, 20 years later, now it's fragile as hell. Apparently, the clear orange on it is brittle as no tomorrow. So, overall, terrible toy. But anyways, anything else you want to say about the Dinobot before we move on, aside from this thing is going to be hype as hell and everyone should buy 1 million of them?
I hope he has teeth.
Oh, he'll have teeth. No, I'm telling you.
They're showing him with like his mouth closed and everything.
If there's
I would hope there's like his jaw, you could bring it down a bit and reveal his teeth. Or
like I said,
maybe
if there's
interlock
any
or
indication.
something.
If there is any indication, if we've seen thus far with Primal and Cheetor, both alt mode, beast, and robot mode will get multiple facial expressions. If at minimum 2. And Dinobot, he's going to have his rotor, he's going to have his sword, and I don't know, maybe they'll include an extra head with like lasers coming out of it, like just plastic, like fake.
I could see them like just doing the eyes part, like the translucent green laser.
Yeah,
kind
that would
of
be
thing.
cool. That would be awesome because that's so associated with him. That's like one of his most powerful attacks. And the only other thing that I kind of hope for all of this, though, I hope that he's taller than Primal. That's like in terms of scale to the other toys,
right?
Because like he was always the tallest of the Maximals. So
I think it's gonna make his alt mode a little bit weird. No,
not really, because you think about it. If he's going to be if already he's going to be a tall robot mode, if it's going to make his alt mode a little bigger, I mean, I kind of expect. I mean, we have different opinions now scientifically of what a Velociraptor should be today.
Oh yeah, that's
because you have to understand when this show was out, that was Jurassic Park era influence.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but I mean, now Velociraptors are being told are like slightly larger than like a dog, and they're more feathery. But I mean, for what it was back then, if they're going to give us something that's a big Velociraptor next to the ape Primal, I'm totally cool with that. For what for that time period of what that show was trying to convey, with all the other pieces of pop culture that were aping what a raptor should look like, whether it be Killer Instinct with Riptor,
right.
or Primal Rage. Actually, Primal Rage probably did it a lot more accurate to what we know of raptors today. But either way, with Talon, but because he had feathers and he was really tiny.
I think this is going to be the most. I think the scaling. Yeah, you're right. It's probably going to be
It's
thing
gonna
they're
work.
gonna
It's
have
gonna
to.
work. Again, to me, it's the same thing. Like the Cheetor, I wanted to own two of them so I could have both. It's the one of the few times I really want to have both because it's just so emoted and iconic. These characters, like we have just as much love for them when they were the alt modes in the show than we were as when they were in the robot modes, which
Hmm.
was such a clever plot device. But yeah, so that's Dinobot more or less.